I think one place we can start with Kyle is, are we looking at the next Sean Payton, Andy Reid here for the 49ers? And that is, I think the common thread would be sustained success. Obviously, now both those guys have Super Bowl championships, but sustained success and being unequivocally two of the premier NFL offensive minds, play callers, quarterback whisperers, however you want to define them. Those two guys are kind of in a, I mean, you got Bill, but I'd say those two guys are in a category that is just the two of them right now, the way they're viewed, right?
Yeah, I would say while they are similar, they're pretty different when you just kind of dive into the people, right? Sean Payton got suspended for a year, had some issue with pills, had some kind of turmoil in his personal life, got a bad divorce. But like
had an issue with the organization too, right? Remember there was the rumor he was going to get traded to the 49ers.
Yeah, just he feels a little bit more like the guy he came from, like a Parcells, a little more explosive. Kind of what I think we all expected Kyle to be when we were hiring him. Like, yeah, this whiz kid that's just kind of a dick. And then I would say everyone, if you just ask, what do you think of Kyle? He's like, God, fucking guy seems like a great guy. In my one experience talking with him at the Combine, couldn't have been any more normal. And talking to Coach Reid at the Combine, like Coach Reid was so impressed that after he won the Super Bowl, and remember Andy's getting bear hugged from every angle and getting thrown, and people are just Andy Reid, like that's where the camera went, and people are just hugging him and his wife, and he's like, Kyle waited for me. And he's like, I didn't expect, like if I was Kyle and he would have walked off, I wouldn't have blamed him or anything. But Kyle's he's one of the 40-year-olds that actually kind of carries himself like he's 55 and been coaching the league for 20 years, right? Just got it complete under control. But I would say Sean, from a football standpoint, is really his entire NFL career has had one quarterback, right? It's just been Drew Brees the entire time. Where when you look at Andy's career, Donovan McNabb to basically Michael Vick, then to Alex and Mahomes. Like he's done it. Like his resume, there is no disputing what kind of quarterback can Andy win with? You'd be like, fucking any type. Runners, throwers, guys that don't have a big arms,
and
guys with the biggest arms in the history of the league.
Picked Foles,
drafted Cobb. Like he can pivot fast. I think we don't necessarily.
Drafted Cobb or traded for Cobb?
Did both. Well, no, he drafted Cobb, then traded Cobb when Vic beat him out. But he was also the guy pounding the table for Jeffrey Lurie to go sign Michael Vick. I would say that Andy's resume, which Kyle's a little different on, much more open-minded with, questionable resumes. And I don't really know where Sean Payton falls. Kind of feels a little Andy like that too, though they haven't had that many sketchy characters. Like Andy's had some questionable guys. That's just over 20 years. Kyle's kind of likes his Kirk Cousins and his Richard Shermans, and he kind of stays in one lane, which works for him. But is he going to have, like if I say he's got 20 years with the Niners, I feel like Kyle would be more likely to have several quarterbacks than just the one. I mean, that's just more than likely Jimmy's not going to be Drew Brees. But
and Andy didn't have Drew Brees until now, right?
No.
Like the guy who would keep.
Yeah, I mean, he had Donovan McNabb for a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He didn't have a lock Hall of Famer, But
he's also been a head coach
a lot
7-8 years longer than Sean Payton has.
So it does feel like Kyle is a little more Andy-like as a human.
Yeah.
Pretty consistent. Basically, what you see every day is what you get. Sean's much more up and down. To me, when I think Sean Payton, how many times have you seen him, like, things go viral of him screaming at opponents, on the side? Like, he's kind of a nut job.
Head about to pop off his neck.
Yeah, I actually think he's got a lot of parallels with Andy. Now, here's the one thing Andy did for a long period. I don't know a long period of time, but 4 or 5 years when I was with him in Philly, he didn't call plays. And obviously, when he went to Kansas City, he got back to he did it originally with Philly. And then as the years went on, he gave him to Marty Morningwig. And then when he went back to Kansas City, he's called plays the entire time. Wouldn't you be a little shocked if Kyle ever gives up calling plays? I guess you could never say never because he could get a Sean McVay one day, a guy that he really trusts. But it kind of feels like that's his pitch.
It's part of what makes him so elite. Right?
So, it's
got to be part of the fun for him. And so he's a guy that's not, like, he's so in control. One thing, too, with him, he did not, like, he was a coordinator for 9 years for 4 different teams. Andy was not a coordinator for 9 years.
I don't think he's ever called plays in the NFL.
I don't think he had. He was an offensive line coach for several years, right? Sean Payton.
And then tight end coach right before he left.
So Kyle just has, he's got a decade of play calling to start, which is just not something that Andy I don't know how that would factor in to giving it up. I guess my theory being maybe it's a little easier for him to do all the multitasking given that he's got the dynamics of play calling
that
down.
That is a good point. He's always done it.
So I don't know. I do think you're right too. Like now Andy, and you worked for Andy, you know him well. His stature partly is what leads to kind of the way he's viewed as just like, the guy that everybody loves and he's easy to love. But I think it is just his personality, everything you've told me, and just watching him.
Wouldn't you say, though, his resume, also the way people talk about him in the business kind of speaks for itself?
Part of his ethos clearly is respect for the player, love for the player, lead the player with love, whatever. Like, that's an oversimplification. And we'll get to this part of Kyle. That was a big question with Kyle, but clearly growing up around players, part of one of the core principles doesn't mean Kyle doesn't cut players, can't be cutthroat when it comes to putting a roster together, but clearly would you agree part of the core of Kyle is just ultimate respect for the player and what the player goes through? Do you agree with that? Because it does feel like it's just
I think the way you're talking about it, like when you're good enough to be at that level for him, because Andy's the same way. Like they're all in on the player, but the doghouse, like they will get rid of you.
Yeah,
once
but
he believes in you.
You don't get rid of guys. I just think at his core, he just has an appreciation for what it is a player goes through.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I'm not saying that Sean doesn't. I'm just saying that feels like it's kind of central to Andy. And watching Kyle, I think it's a big part of Kyle.
Wouldn't you agree that when you say the words pro player, it probably for most people they think, oh, he's kind of soft.
Yeah.
And I would say they have both those two guys share something in common. Pro player, because more of a respect than it is, I'm just going to kiss your ass, right? It's just we're in this together. Like this is a group effort. Where, I think sometimes you see different coaches. It doesn't always feel like that. Even the good ones sometimes, I think, And there's the one thing with the NFL probably more than the other sports in basketball or baseball is there are a lot of different ways to be successful, right? Like you would say, like I wouldn't want to cross Mike Zimmer. I wouldn't Sean Payton coming at you. Whoa, Belichick won't even talk to you. He'll just you'll just get a text like your bags are packed, right? And Pete, is this all-time outlier. And Sean's, wouldn't you say Sean McVay's kind of cut from that Kyle cloth a little bit too?
Yeah.
Where it just kind of feels like the respect level's high, but you also holding you to a high standard. Talks pretty positively. Maybe they're just kind of the modern day what you have to be. Like are the days of Bill Parcells somewhat over?
Especially as a younger coach.
Yeah, I think it's much more difficult. But you could, I bet people that were around Parcells when he was super young would be like, yeah, if we didn't win, it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
Maybe if you don't win, no matter what your style is, whether you're a pro player, whether you're an asshole, it's just not going to, people respect when I think you know what you're talking about to help the group and help us as individuals succeed.
Well, yeah, you're right. There is just a realness to those two guys where it's warmth, but it is an understanding that like there's success is the only outcome here, right? Watching Kyle look so miserable through 2 years of bad football for the 49ers, we did come out of those 2 years understanding how competitive he is, but it never seemed like he was taking it out in an unnecessary way on the players, right? He took a lot of blame, even though it really wasn't his fault in terms of the way games played out in those first 2 years when they were losing. The other thing is, and Kyle has not had a long run here, but Sean Payton won the Super Bowl year 4. He went to the NFC Championship game year 1, won the Super Bowl year 4. So he got the ring early. Andy lost, 4 NFC Championship games and a Super Bowl before he ultimately won a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
And he lost 3 NFC Championship games in a row and then lost the Super Bowl. Andy was at this point where people did talk, like, can he win the big one? Are they choking? Can he manage the clock? Andy had to go through a lot of high-level failure, if there's such a thing. It was a lot of success, but he was coming up short. Kyle hasn't had that long yet, but Kyle did get this job after losing a Super Bowl, had 2 years that were really bad, and then in year 3 it was great, but he also lost that Super Bowl. No, I don't think people are. I don't. I don't know. I think the criticism for Andy was much, much stronger, right? And a lot of it was always like clock management stuff. But
to me, the clock management.
I
would
my
say
point being is we saw Andy, just for a long time have to overcome like high, bright spotlight, high level failure, if we're going to call it failure. And we've seen Kyle is having early in his career to work through. I mean, the kind of failure you'd want. You're in the Super Bowl twice, but I think an element of him is we've seen him handle tough situations really well.
To me, I put some stock in big games who you lose to, and Kyle's 2 historic losses. And one of them, he was the offensive coordinator, not the head coach. No offensive coordinator, I would say, in our lifetime feels like he was the head coach. No, he wasn't. If the head coach wanted to run the ball, say run the ball. It's like, put it on Kyle. Well, it's also Dan Quinn's the head fucking coach. But regardless, they lost to Belichick and Brady. The greatest coach and the greatest quarterback ever. And this year they lost to Mahomes and Andy. So it's 2 historic losses. You'd say, if you were going to lose, you're not exactly losing to like Vince Young and Jeff Fisher, right? And I look back, I just got Andy's first that stretch of the 3 NFC Championship games in 2004. Lost to the New York Giants in 2000. Well, they went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Ravens. Lost to the Rams in 2001. Well, they went to the Super Bowl, right? And lost to the Patriots. Lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2002. They won the Super Bowl. Lost to the Carolina Panthers in 2003. Well, they went to the Super Bowl and lost in a game-winning field goal. And then they lost to the Patriots. And then in 2006, he lost to the Saints that had that great year. Like, his losses are coming to like really high-level operations. It's not like I don't think he had that many bad losses, And even my year in Philly, we lost to Green Bay in 2010. Aaron Rodgers, they won the Super Bowl. And 2 years ago when they had the devastating loss, you're like, God, if D Ford, it was the Patriots, right? I mean,
So it was
to
five,
me, these
so
guys,
5, John. He lost 5 conference championship games and a Super Bowl before winning a Super Bowl.
He also lost, I skipped one, the Cardinals, the year that they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers, that crazy James Harrison return. He lost to them in the NFC Championship game.
That's 5.
So it's like he's losing to like Kurt Warner, Larry Fitzgerald, Tom Brady, right? Just like these pretty good people. And I look at Kyle the same way. Like that's what separates the elite guys. If you look at some of Belichick's losses, who does it come against, right? Historically, like Tom Coughlin and Eli twice, Foles and Peterson when they were just touched by the football gods. Some of the years like Payton got him the one time. Like part of the highest level of sports, whether you're Tiger Woods, whether you're, you LeBron James, whether you're Kevin Durant, like you're going to just have some tough losses, but a lot of their tough losses are usually going to come to someone else elite because they got to be great to beat them. And that's where I look at Kyle going, I'm going to take my chances against 95% of the people. And you know what? If you get Andy Reid or you get Belichick, or let's say in the NFC, you get next year Sean Payton in the second round, that's a coin flip game. And if I got a coin flip game against the other elite guys, I'll take my chances every day of the week. And that's where I think most teams are like, is Cliff Kingsbury ever going to be a coin flip against, Sean Payton? Or you just start going around the league. Like, is Bill O'Brien a coin flip against Andy Reid? And to me, if you're always like that, it's like you could stay in the slow lane or you could always try to go get a big fish. Because until you get a big fish, more than likely you're not going to sustain success.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna lose.
Well, that's
right?
you would say this year.
Look who
right?
Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh lost to Bill Parcells. Like you're not always gonna win these games.
But you would say this year individually is a great example when he played the 2 guys we're talking about, Sean Payton and Andy Reid. Went toe to toe with Sean Payton. Went toe to toe with Andy Reid.
Yeah, and look at a couple of like you said, look at a couple like him against Pete Carroll, both coin flip games. The Harbaugh game, coin flip game.
Him against McVay, shorthanded. Like when the Niners were bad, he had some impressive performances.
I know. So it's probably a no-brainer just to rip up his contract, give him a new 6-year deal.
Safe to say we're bullish on
Kyle
Shanahan, but have been since the Niners were bad, and that leads.
There is more pressure now that comes though, right? To be the next Andy, to be the next Sean Payton, you got to win a lot.
Part of that pressure
he already
came
has
from that pressure, whether he signs the extension or not. He just went to the Super Bowl, right? He has to prove that, like.
there's going to be pressure, no way around it. But once you become the highest paid guy, like one of the reasons when you say Gruden has kind of been shit on these last couple of years, people are like, God, he's stealing, right? That's kind of it. Like, is he really worth that
You're
money?
saying one of the
like,
reasons is the money, yeah, and the other reason is
once you
just
start
that they
getting
haven't
huge
even been,
cash, you don't win.
they haven't been close to being good. I mean,
we do it more. We do it more with players than coaches, but I think with NFL coaches, and I'd say college too. Once you start making like $8, $9, $10 million, every time you miss the playoffs, it's like, what are you paying this guy to do?
Yeah. But
you kind of get treated like a player, like you got to produce.